You are sitting in the dark. It is 70,000 BC. There is no word for dark yet. There is no word for anything yet. There is just the absence of light and the presence of everything that wants to eat you somewhere out there beyond the edge of the firelight. But right now you are not thinking about that. Right now, something is happening to you that has never happened to you before in your entire life. The fire is burning something it has not burned before. A plant. A specific plant that fell into the flames by accident 20 minutes ago. And the smoke coming off it is doing something to the inside of your skull that you have no words for and no framework to understand. The world has gone soft. The fear that lives permanently at the base of your brain, the constant low hum of danger and hunger and threat, has gone quiet. You feel, for the first time you can remember, like everything is going to be fine. It isn't, obviously, but you don't know that right now. And what happens next? In that fire-lit moment, in that completely accidental chemical encounter between one human brain and one burning plant, will echo forward through every culture, every civilization, every ritual, every addiction, every sacred ceremony, and every gas station convenience store display for the next 70,000 years. This is the story of how humans discovered smoking, and it goes so much deeper than you think. Let's start with something that almost nobody talks about when they talk about smoking. The human brain was ready for it. Long before the first human intentionally inhaled smoke from a burning plant, the human brain had already built the machinery to respond to it. Your brain contains a system called the endocannabinoid system, a network of receptors that regulate mood, memory, appetite, pain, and stress. This system did not evolve because of any plant. It evolved because your brain produces its own compounds that work on those receptors naturally. Compounds that are released during exercise, during social bonding, during moments of intense focus or calm. The plant did not create the system. The system was already there, which means that when the first human inhaled smoke from a burning cannabis plant, or a burning nicotiana plant, or any of dozens of other psychoactive species that grow naturally across Africa, Asia, and the Americas, their brain did not react with confusion. Their brain recognized it, not intellectually, not consciously, but at a level so deep it predates conscious thought entirely, at the level of receptor and molecule and chemical signal. Something in that brain said, yes. Something said, this is familiar. Something said, whatever this is, I know what to do with it. That is not an accident of chemistry. That is 70,000 years of evolutionary history, meeting a burning plant and recognizing itself. Now here is what the archaeology actually shows us, because there is a difference between ancient humans accidentally inhaling smoke and ancient humans deliberately choosing to inhale it. And that difference matters. The oldest direct physical evidence of deliberate smoking comes from a burial site in the Pamir Mountains in Central Asia. Researchers excavating the site found wooden braziers, small containers designed to hold burning material, containing heated stones and residue from cannabis plants. Not wild cannabis grown for fiber or seeds, high-potency cannabis, placed deliberately in a ritual burial context. The date on that site is approximately 500 BC. 2,500 years ago, someone understood what that smoke did well enough to include it in one of the most significant rituals a human community performs, the burial of the dead. They were not experimenting. They were not discovering. They already knew, which means the discovery happened long before that, long before any date we can currently put a number on. And then there is the problem of organic material. Stone tools from 3 million years ago survive because stone is essentially indestructible. But a wooden pipe filled with dried herbs? Gone in a few centuries under normal ground conditions. A leather pouch of plant material, dissolved back into the earth before any archaeologist with a brush and a trowel ever arrives. The absence of older physical evidence does not mean older use did not happen. It means the evidence rotted. In the 5th century BC, an ancient Greek historian named Herodotus wrote something that academics dismissed for centuries as exaggeration. He described a nomadic people called the Scythians who lived across the Eurasian steppe. He wrote that they would set up small enclosed tents, heat stones until they glowed red, and throw plant material onto those stones. Then they would sit inside those tents breathing the smoke. And Herodotus wrote, and this is his actual word, that they howled with pleasure. For a very long time, historians assumed he was either embellishing or misunderstanding what he saw. Then archaeologists began excavating Scythian burial mounds, and they found bronze braziers, heated stones, plant residue, exactly what Herodotus described in exactly the detail he described it. The man was not exaggerating. He was not confused. He was simply a historian doing what historians do, writing down what he saw. And what he saw was a sophisticated, deliberate, culturally embedded smoking ritual that the Scythians had clearly been practicing for a very long time before he ever showed up to observe it. He was not witnessing the discovery of smoking. He was witnessing a tradition so old that nobody involved could remember where it started. Now let's talk about tobacco, because tobacco is the plant most people associate with smoking. And the story of tobacco is one of the most extraordinary, and eventually one of the most destructive stories in the entire history of human behavior. Tobacco is native to the Americas. It did not exist in Europe, Africa, or Asia until the late 15th century, which means that for most of recorded human history, the Old World had no tobacco, and the Americas had been using it for thousands of years before anyone from the Old World arrived. Archaeological evidence of tobacco use in the Americas dates back at least 3,500 years. Some researchers believe it could be considerably older, possibly tied to early cultivation practices in the Amazon basin going back 10,000 years or more. And here is the thing that gets lost in almost every modern conversation about tobacco. In ancient America, tobacco was not a habit. It was not recreational. It was not something you did because you were stressed or bored or addicted. It was sacred. Tobacco was used in healing ceremonies, in communication with ancestors and spirits, in the binding of agreements between communities. Blowing smoke on another person was not an act of pollution. It was an act of blessing, of protection, of deep respect. A person who smoked in a ritual context was not having a cigarette break. They were performing an act of connection between the living world and something beyond it. The smoke itself was understood as a messenger, something that carried intention and prayer upward and brought vision and guidance downward. This framing, smoke as sacred carrier, appears independently across dozens of cultures that had no contact with each other. In the Americas, in ancient India, in ancient Egypt, in the shamanic traditions of Siberia and Central Asia, completely separate civilizations, completely separate plants, completely separate histories, all arriving at the same understanding. Smoke crosses boundaries. Smoke carries things that ordinary matter cannot carry. That is not coincidence. That is the human brain making the same observation from the same experience across thousands of years and thousands of miles of separation. One of the oldest surviving medical documents in the world is an ancient Egyptian text dating to around 1550 BC. It describes treatments involving the deliberate inhalation of smoke from specific heated herbs, treatments designed for conditions affecting the throat and the lungs. Ancient Indian medical texts going back over 3,000 years describe a practice literally translated as smoke drinking. Specific plants, specific conditions, specific preparation methods, detailed protocols refined over centuries. This was not improvised. This was a medical system, and it appeared not just in India and Egypt, but across ancient China, ancient Mesopotamia, ancient Greece. In virtually every early civilization on record, there is evidence of deliberately inhaled smoke being used as a recognized medical practice. These civilizations did not learn this from each other. They discovered it independently. When tobacco arrived in Europe in the 16th century, it spread with a speed that should feel familiar. Within decades, a plant that indigenous Americans had spent thousands of years treating with reverence and ritual discipline had become a continental obsession. Within a century, it was a global trade commodity. Within 3 centuries, the industrially manufactured cigarette had made tobacco consumption cheaper, more convenient, and more addictive than anything that had come before. And then the 20th century tobacco industry spent decades and billions of dollars suppressing the evidence that their product was killing the people who bought it. Evidence their own scientists had compiled internally. They marketed to children. They hired doctors to endorse cigarettes. They engineered the chemistry of their products specifically to maximize addiction. The gap between a shaman placing sacred plant material on heated stones in a burial ceremony 2,500 years ago and a tobacco executive in 1955 signing off on advertising cigarettes to children is one of the largest moral distances in the entire history of human behavior. Both involve smoke. Almost nothing else connects them. So when did humans start smoking? The honest answer is we do not know. The physical evidence takes us back 2,500 years with certainty and probably much further with reasonable confidence. The behavioral drive behind smoking, the desire to alter consciousness, to share ritual experience, to use the body's own chemical receptors in ways that change how the world feels, is almost certainly as old as the species itself. It may be as old as fire, because the moment the first human sat near the first fire and breathed the first smoke and felt something change inside them, that was the beginning, not of a habit, not of an industry, not of a health crisis, of a curiosity. The oldest and most persistent